Hey gang, it's Farmer Juan at the Jazz Farm, and going to go through and do a quick tour of how things are progressing in the gardens. This little opening segment here is just a little picture of the trees that actually survived the winter this winter. It's our first attempt at apple trees out here, and having talked to some people who have done it before, it's a challenge. But these ones are now in their third year. We planted a dozen and there are 9 of them left. And I've got a couple in the greenhouse that I'm going to plant in their places. The deal here, of course, always is getting water to things. And last year, a couple of them succumbed to the drought. But the exciting part is, I know that it takes about 5 years for a tree to really prove up, especially when you plant little ones like ours. These are semi-dwarfs, so they'll get quite a bit bigger. But we actually have about a 1/2 inch big little apple on one of them. That's kind of fun because we got actually some blossoms this year, so they're hanging in there. They must be starting to get their roots down. We're going to be planting a lot more trees and berry bushes and so forth, but this was the first attempt, and I got these in just before I had back surgery, so we've been kind of watching these and seeing how things progress. The animals are kind of loving the day today. It's cool outside, and we are right now on storm watch. You can see up over here, it's looking a little ominous. They're saying right now there's the potential for egg-size hail. So I'll be watching, and if it really gets too out of hand, then all the vehicles go into barns and garages and so forth. And of course, our turkeys never shut up. Anyway, so the last I did was a video of showing that all of the covers that we built. I don't think I showed that underneath now they all have shade cloth attached to them. This is Murphy's Law. If you prepare for something like a drought that killed your garden last year, because that's what happened, if you do all of this work, the complete opposite weather will happen once it's done. This year has been so cool. We usually by this time of year are in the 90s. It virtually never rains, and we haven't broken 80 except for a couple of days. It's been mostly in the high 70s. Wet as the devil, and I'm going to have to turn off the drip irrigation because it's too wet. So last year we couldn't even buy a drink of water, and now we got more water than we can handle. But that being said, the cool weather and the water has made everything do very well. It's kind of funny, last year our sweet potatoes did exceptionally well. This year I put them in the ground and they died. And I found out why. It's because they love hot weather, they love hot ground, and this year was cold, and they died. Go figure. So I guess the next time a drought shows up, we'll be ready for it, but it's not this year. Maybe it'll be later this summer. You never know. Summer's not over. So anyway, we got our onions that have taken off. We planted those from basically from starts. And they're doing really well. There's 2 different kinds there. This is our row of squash, about 5 or 6 of them per bed. There's acorn squash, there's butternut squash, and spaghetti squash all down. And if these all produce the way that they have in the past, we won't have any shortage of squash. Over here is the obligatory zucchini patch, which we eventually get to the point where we have so many zucchini that we put them in bags, find unlocked parked cars, throw them in the car and run. Kidding. But no, we'll make a lot of zucchini fritters and pickles and things like that out of them, and we'll find a use for them until we get too sick of it. This is our grab sack of leftover squash plants that didn't go in the other beds. Some of our gardeners, my wife, and last year my mother, can't murder plants. So if we have leftover plants, they always try and find some place to put them. And this was it. So there's butternut, acorn, and spaghetti squash in this bed. This bed that's looking all peaked, there's nothing in there. That was the sweet potatoes. It'll get turned into beans. When things come out of the garden, it always gets turned into beans. So green beans are a mainstay of what we eat. The thing that we grow the best here is bindweed. And this was just weeded out not 4 or 5 days ago. and it's coming back up again now. But the underlying, the stuff that in there, if you can see, it looks like grass, is carrots. So we've got 2 full beds of carrots, and we'll can and eat those. And you can store them in sand too, which allows them to stay pretty well through most of the winter. This is our second bed, and once they get bigger, we'll mulch them down with straw that we get out of the goat pen. The goat pen needs to be cleaned. It's full of goat manure and urine and straw. You cover that up, fertilizes the beds, that and the composted chicken manure, and you got the best fertilizer money cannot buy. This is our cabbage patch, not because we're sauerkraut fans, but because we like coleslaw, and also I have some stir-fry recipes that make kind of the egg roll ingredients, the innards for egg rolls, and you eat it, but you don't have to necessarily put it in a wrapper. So we got the cabbage coming up. Last year, it stayed around and we got a couple of heads of it, but we had flea beetles go after them. This year, no flea beetles, and also they didn't really much like the scorching heat that we had. The peppers are now starting to look like they love life again. They are one of the ones that got bit really bad from the cold. They had a little bit of yellowing on their leaves, and I'm suspecting that now anymore that's because we've got way too much water going on them. We're expecting rain again. Had rain yesterday, had rain 2 days before that. So it's crazy, but we've got anywhere from habaneros, jalapenos, and cayenne, because I make habanero, lots of stuff, but also pepper, habanero pepper, grind it all up, dehydrate it and grind it up. I dehydrate the jalapenos because they'll keep for 10 years. Cayennes, we make our own cayenne pepper. Poblanos, because they're really great for grilling, and I've got a fajita recipe that works really well with them. Anaheims, we stuff those and grill them. Something else. Oh, another one I'm trying, it's called a Cubanelle. It's kind of a big version of an Anaheim, so the more stuff you can put in them to grill them, the better. And then this whole bed is 3 different kinds of bell peppers. And again, we've already had one harvest off of them. They're growing very well. The new leaves that are coming out are all dark green, so I'm not too worried about that. I'm just going to kick off the drip irrigation if the weather forecast doesn't clear. This is our first beds of green beans. They actually came up. I didn't think they were going to. I was using older seed, and they didn't seem to want to come up. And then I went to weed the bed out in preparation for newer seeds, and lo and behold, look what happened. So more Murphy's Law. Try to correct something and you find out it doesn't need to be corrected. This, because eggplant Parmesan is righteous, especially if you use the one from America's Test Kitchen. We have eggplant enough to get us through the summer. We've tried to dehydrate it before and that kind of thing. It just doesn't work. It's all you're doing is making little hockey pucks. And instead of growing bunching onions this year, I'm growing shallots, because I really like the flavor that goes into recipes using that instead of necessarily green onions or regular onions. They almost have a garlic flavor to them. So I'll take you real quick through the greenhouse. I turned off the ventilator fans because otherwise you wouldn't be able to hear anything I say, and gosh, I don't want you hanging on my every word. The greenhouse has really turned a corner. We have broccoli that we have been eating it, much to my son's chagrin. Inside of here also we have celery growing, because last year celery did really well, and it looks like it's doing pretty well again. It was amazing. That's supposed to be really hard to grow, and it seems to love it here. This is my tray of sunflower plants that are going to go out on the ends of all those beds I just showed you. It's fun to grow them, creates a lot of sunflower seeds. We use them for treats for the birds and for the goats. Goats just love them. And nice green, healthy tomato plants. These plants, not 3 weeks ago, were spindly, yellow, looking at me with eyes of panic, and were just, as I said at our local cafe, they looked really pissed off. because they got too cold. And I put composted chicken manure, blood meal fertilizer, and composted chicken manure in here. And we kept the place closed up so it would warm up during the daytime. And they have absolutely skyrocketed back. This is our group of tomatillos. We like the sour taste, especially in green chili kinds of things. And we make tomatillo salsa. That's really quite good too, especially with pork, because we raise our share of pork. But all of the tomato plants, in fact, you can see here on the Ace plants, the other ones I just showed you were Romas for saucing, but one of our little slicer plants has got a tomato on it. Got oregano, and about 2/3 of the greenhouse is tomatoes. But you can see here, this guy is coming back. He's going to be just fine, but you can see just how much of the die-off that happened because of them getting cold. And you say, well, in a greenhouse, you should be able to extend your growing season. Not if it's 12 degrees. If it's 12 degrees outside, greenhouse is going to get cold. And if you've ever tried to heat one, and I have, not terribly efficient. Sage. We try to make a lot of our own herbs along with our own peppers, grinding those up to be able to use those as well. More tomatoes. We're going to have more cherry tomatoes than we can count. In fact, 2 years ago with our cherry tomatoes, we were actually canning them. Canning cherry tomatoes and taking bucket loads of them and throwing them at the chickens. There's a couple apple trees that I'm going to be putting out in the next couple of days. They're actually blooming. I'm very happy. They only cost me $13. Deal. Thyme. Zena's favorite smell is basil leaves. Thyme is mine. I just absolutely love the smell of that stuff. And over here, we have cucumbers. And they also were not really liking cold weather. Cucumbers don't. But looky, they have recovered. We are cucumbering even before they started climbing the trellis. So that's really good news. And oh my God, what is this? What is this? It must be a weed. Colorado's finest weed, Colorado catnip. Well, why would you do that? Because I can. It's legal. My generation and the generations plus or minus mine worked very hard to make that legal. Also, I don't drink, and I also don't trust the pharmaceutical situation as far as I can throw them. And it's just a plant. We got cauliflower growing, and there are little cauliflowers in there someplace, along with a whole bunch of spinach that I got to get out here tomorrow and cut back and freeze, because they're starting to get the pre-bolting leaves on them, the kind of the devil's spear kind of leaves that they get. But we've already gotten a dozen little Ziploc bags frozen downstairs, so we're doing pretty good. So the greenhouse is definitely showing its usual promise. I had mentioned in the last video hooking up the drip irrigation system. This is all the particulars that come off the wellhead, timers, pressure regulators, and all that nonsense. Stuff that takes me away from gardening and forces me to have to be with tools. This bed needs to be weeded out, but it's strawberries and it's the youngest one, and I finally took off the cover because it was breaking my bed over in the corner. So that one just needs to be worked on. But this strawberry bed's going to town. It seems to like everything that we've done to it. It seems to me that everything likes chicken poop. This bed is all beets, and its only drawback right now is it needs to be thinned. You need to get them down so that they're about 3 fingers spacing between them. And Zena likes beets, so does her boss. I'm not wild about them, but it's one bed, and they can be used in lots of different things. We used to juice them too. This will come out in the next couple of weeks. This is all of our garlic, and this garlic patch was raised all from our own garlic. It's all plants that came from our harvest from last year. And we've got 2 beds of those, so we'll go through and keep the best bulbs for seed for next season and use the other ones. And then what I'll do with the ones that are still left from last year is to dehydrate them and make garlic powder out of them. This is black beans. Part of our long-term food storage, of course, is hard beans, lots of rice. And I've been raising hard beans for a long time. And not only are they really tasty and they store really well, it's really fun to shell them. We'll take piles of them and just put them in a bin and sit and watch a movie or something and shell beans. So anyway, that's the garden progress. Everything is doing great. This year it's too much water instead of not enough. And I'll take it because that can be remedied. Well, so can the drought now, especially with the shade cloth and an increased capacity for water pressure. So anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll keep you updated.